Yo, before you go anywhere, I know you're looking at the quality of the video and you're like, okay, this is just some guy that's just talking. But no, I'm like really smart. So smart that I don't spend money on things that I probably won't use every day, like fancy equipment. So don't go anywhere. So anyway, I just saw the movie probably less than an hour ago, less than 45 minutes ago, The Black Phone. And I just want to give you, a rundown of what the movie's about. I'm a big fan of this type of movie. I believe that in a lot of ways it is a spiritual successor to Sinister. Sinister One, it had a Sinister One feel to it. If you like Sinister One, and that's like one of your top 10 horror movies of all time, then yeah, I think we can pretty much. It's pretty safe to say that we share the same perspective because Sinister One is one of my favorite horror films, and I believe that this had a lot of similarities. So, a quick rundown or recount is what I would call it. So the movie starts out. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't do spoiler alerts because, like, you know, I'm gonna, you're a grown adult. You know what you don't want to see, what you do want to see. So I'm not going to do all that. So keep it real straight to the point. So from my recollection and what I can recount is I'm going to just do a quick rundown of the movie. Starts off with a little kid, right? And you get introduced to the kid and the sister. And right from the beginning, the movie makes it very clear that the young man is intelligent. He's doing things with rocket ships and he aspires to be a astronaut. It appears to be some type of astronaut he aspires to be. And then as far as his sister, they make it very clear from the beginning of the movie that she has supernatural gifts. She can see things in her dreams that typically come true. They introduce the killer, bad character, very early in the film, that black truck that you know about. And they play it very, very classy in which they show the black truck, they show the guy, and they blur him out a little bit and then they show the kid that's going to be abducted, and then it just kind of blacks out, and it leaves a lot of the conclusion to your imagination. I believe they show a couple kids get kidnapped before they finally kidnap the main character. Now, I do want to point out that there's a very special person that gets kidnapped, and this particular person that gets kidnapped helped the main character fight off some bullies. But when he got kidnapped, the bullies were able to pick on the kid, the main character, once again. I believe his name was Flynn or some weird. It was a weird name, anyway. So anyway, the guy who helped the main character gets kidnapped, and we're all thinking the same thing in the movie theater because they made this character seem very very equipped and able to defend himself. That's how he was able to protect the main character. So when he gets kidnapped, we're all thinking the same thing. Like, wait, so this guy can really hold his own. He wasn't able to fend off the evil character. That's what we're all thinking as we watch the film. But anyway, some time transpires, and the main character and his sister, as they walk home from school, they often split up, and everybody in the theater is thinking the same thing. Like, why won't they stay together? As they're splitting up, this is just bound to be a bad situation. So they keep splitting up, and I think they do it about 3 times before the inevitable happens, and that is the young boy, the main character, gets kidnapped. And as he gets kidnapped, we're all also wondering why the killer isn't being more active and taking care of actually killing the child, because like I told you, about 2 or 3 people get kidnapped very quickly in very quick succession. So I believe the main character, once he's kidnapped, we're all expecting things to ramp up really quickly, but in totality it seems like the killer allows the kid to stay alive for about 4 to 5 days. um he goes down into the basement once he kidnaps the main character, and he toys with the guy. And it was very surprising how much time he allowed the character to stay in the holding cell or the basement, because it just felt like he gave him so much time. And that was another thing about the movie. A lot of times it was like really convenient how things happen. But as the kid is in the basement, he's kind of like trying to figure out the landscape of the basement, how it's set up. But pretty soon the phone starts to ring, just like you've seen in the trailers. And I think the first time he doesn't hear anything, but then the second time he hears a voice, and it turns out it is the voice of the people or the young kids that were killed prior to him actually going into the basement. And now, as he's in the basement, we have some detectives visiting the main character's sister because she can see things in her dreams, and they're asking her, "Hey, what do you know about what's going on or the abductions?" And she's giving them very rudimentary answers, basically just saying, "Hey, a couple things have happened in my dreams that come true." And they have a father that they introduce. He's a alcoholic by what they depict him as, and he's kind of trying to keep the sister from showcasing this talent because apparently their mother died as a result of having this ability, and of course, and they stated within the film that she died by suicide because she had dreams that told her to do things to harm herself. So the father is trying to like talk the little girl out of it, like, "Hey, these dreams are not real; they're fake." But the daughter is very keen on this ability, so she's having dreams. And as she's having dreams, she sees her brother, and of course, she reaches out to those detectives, saying like, "Hey, I know where my brother is," but it's not as clear. Now, one of my least favorite parts about the film, obviously, is the young lady prays to Jesus, and for a while, I was feeling good about that. It was really cool to see Jesus and or Jesus referenced in a film. I mean, that was just great. I mean, I just think it's underdone. Um, so often evil is depicted and things of that nature. But in this case, the little girl prays to Jesus and is trying to get answers about where her brother is. Now, where this thing turns and goes in the wrong direction for me is that she curses Jesus once she's not getting the dreams or the results that she's asking for. So she curses Jesus, and you know, I didn't know how to feel about that. On one hand, it was like I get it. Sometimes if you have this preconceived notion that Jesus is a genie, then you will oftentimes get upset when he doesn't give you what you want right then and there. And by her being so young, I believe the little girl had to be every bit of 8 or 9. Her having a young child's mind, it did make a little sense that she might get upset and frustrated given that her brother is abducted and she's looking for answers. But it still didn't sit completely right with me. I mean, I understood it from a human element, but it wasn't the best thing. Of course, towards the end of the film, she does get the dream that she really needs to crack this case and locate her brother. And I guess that's the film's way of saying Jesus is real. You know, I still didn't like the whole cursing Jesus thing, but that's a personal thing. I'm not sure everybody would feel the same way. But anyway, while he's in the basement, the phone is ringing and he's talking to, I believe it's 4 to 5 characters who have passed away prior to him getting there. And they're giving him instructions on how to break free, what to expect. One example is the killer, he would leave the little boy, the main character, in the basement and leave the door cracked. And the main character naturally sees the door crack and says to himself, "Wait, this is my chance to get away." But as soon as he touches the door, you know, um, the phone rings, and then it's one of the kids, or maybe even 2 of the kids, reference what would happen if he went up the stairs. And apparently, if he went up the stairs, he would get caught by the villain because he sets that trap and he waits at the top of the stairs in order to catch the person. And the film calls this particular process naughty boy. And apparently, once the child breaks that particular band of trust, when he leaves the door open, they actually go upstairs and he catches them. Apparently, he spanks them relentlessly and then transitions them to the next phase of the abduction, which is death, apparently. But anyway, a few of those things are spelled out for the main character in terms of giving him help in the way to get out of the basement. And he tries all these different things. One of the things he tries is to dig a hole in the ground because one of the people who passed away, one of the children who passed away, they referenced a open tile that he could pull up and dig underneath. Then he does it, and you're wondering the whole time, like, wait a minute. So you dug this hole in the ground, but like, first off, we don't see a kid really doing that. Like, I mean, think about it right now. Could you go into your kitchen, pull a towel up, and just dig a 6 foot hole? Like, no, not really, with your bare hands. So the film does have several moments like that where you're like, that's just not realistic. It breaks the realism of playing A lot, from the dreams that the little girl has. I mean, we've all been in dreams and have tried to, take control of that dream. I know I have. I've actually tried to take control of a dream that I'm in, like, really use my natural mind in the dream. And I did like that they try to, show that. I thought that was pretty cool. But still, the way that she does it is like supernatural. But anyway, another thing was they told him to pull a gate down that was guarding a window, which didn't make sense to me because I'm like, why would the killer put the little boy in a basement with a window that's viewable? Like, if you were outside that window, you would see him down there. So that didn't make sense to me, but it is what it is. Another thing that one of the children who passed away told the main character to do was to, beat the wall because on the other side of the wall was a freezer. So he grabs the top of the toilet and he beats the crap out the wall, and he gets, he's able to get inside of this freezer. But he's kicking the freezer door, and apparently it's latched or closed from the other side. But we soon find out that what's in the freezer is more important because apparently there's some steaks, tea steaks, or what they call them, like steaks in this. The ones from Tom and Jerry that he feeds the dog. Well, anyway, pretty soon he does find a way to escape because one of the children called the phone and said, "Hey, he's sleeping right now because he's waiting at the top of the stairs for you to come up and to surprise you." But I guess because he had been waiting for so long, he fell asleep. And the little boy, the main character, said, "Well, but he'll catch me." Like, no, he's asleep. But if you do get past him, the main door is guarded by a combination lock. And the main character's like, what's the combination? And little boy's like, it used to be the lock I put on my bike before he was abducted. So he's like, what's the combination? He's like, I don't know what it is, but check that wall over there. So this one thing I didn't really mention is the children. They are essentially spirits, and it's like their spirit is not at rest. So they essentially they remember bits and pieces of who they actually are, and the longer they've been gone, the less they remember. So a lot of times the children were not able to recount their name. They were not able to remember small details, but they all seem to share this thing about knowing little ways to get out. And apparently wherever they died at, they remembered the techniques that they applied before they passed away. And they all grouped together, these five individuals grouped together and shared their knowledge. And I believe that is what really helps them in the end. But anyway, he tries to get upstairs. He unlocks the lock. He even gets outside the door. And as he's running, somehow the villain wakes up and he hops in his black van and he guns it and he chases the guy down. This was a very intense moment because everybody in the theater was like gasping, like, "Oh no!" We're happy that the little boy's getting away, but we're at the same time terrorized because the villain just packs on this supernatural speed and is able to catch the kid. It was so unrealistic, but I liked it because it created tension. But it was like the little boy, the main character, had at least 20 steps on the villain. So somehow the villain was able to get out the house, start his car up, drive the little boy down, hop out the van, and tackle the little boy. So he tackles the little boy. The little boy screaming at the top of his lungs. And we start to see the neighbors turn the lights on as if they can hear the little boy scream. But soon as he does the screaming, the villain puts the little boy in the chokehold, puts a knife to his throat, and say, if you scream again, he's gonna gut you like they say a hog or a pig or something like that. So the little boy swallows his screams, and then you start to see the neighborhood, the neighbors' lights go out. So now like it's really a problem. So here's where the film has some dips in reality because you look at the spirits of the little kids that are trying to guide the main character away from the villain. You see how they're done in terms of their makeup. They're like gutted, neck sliced and all these type of things. And then you wonder why he is not doing that to the main character. I mean, first off, he's leaving him downstairs forever. The little boy tries to escape. He has a knife to his throat. I mean, he never seemed to harm the little boy. And you wonder why, as you're seeing the spirits of the other children that he's harmed. And of course, the film explains it away as to say, well, the villain wants to play with this particular guy in terms of like, scaring him more, He's trying to give him opportunity. Like he's playing with his food, if you will, like a cat does a mouse. But it doesn't really help because you see the grotesque makeup of the other children, other five children that have, encountered this villain. Like he does them terribly. They have slices on their face. So anyway, he brings the little boy back in the basement, and essentially he's like, good try, good try. And then he gets one more call, and this is from the guy who protected him in the beginning of the film against the bullies. Of course, he got abducted, and he's like, "Listen, this is the last call you're gonna get, and tonight is the night. It's like the big showdown. You're gonna like." He's telling the main character, "You're gonna. This is the night that you're gonna become one of us if you don't take all of the tips and techniques that we've given you." So he's like, "Wait a minute, Robin." The guy's name was Robin. Robin was a heck of a fighter. It shows his boxing skills at the beginning of the movie. So he says, "Wait a minute, Robin. If you couldn't take out this guy, then how am I going to take him out?" And Robin's like, "Listen, man, you're thinking of you. You've always been strong. You've always been tough. You've always taken the punch and got back up." So he's trying to like hype him up. So Robin gives him this final technique, and he's like, "Pack the phone full of dirt, and when he comes down there, I want you to come back, come forward, raise the phone, and crack him in the face." So he's making the main character try this over and over again, so it becomes muscle memory. And it's funny because the little boy does it maybe 5 times, and then Robin's like, "Perfect, you got it." And everybody's in the theater like, "Man, that is not going to be enough to ward off this huge villain who's taking out Robin, by the way." It's funny how movies just tie things up. So one thing I didn't talk about was the villain and family. It turns out the villain lives with his brother, and his brother has no idea that the villain is who he is. And in fact, his brother is trying to solve the case with the cops. So the cops come and knock on his door. They say, "Hey, have you heard anything?" He invites them in. He shows them this wall with all of these different pictures saying, "Hey, the guy who's doing these killings probably lives over here somewhere." And of course, he comes across as crazy. So the cops is kind of like, whatever. "Hey, by the way, before your brother gets home, why don't you clean up?" And then they pan down to the table. They show cocaine. Apparently the brother was doing cocaine. He's like, "Oh crap! Now they're never going to believe me." But it was crazy because the brother was clueless about his evil brother's seductive, crazy activities. And it's definitely mind blowing because you wonder to yourself, how do you not know your brother has a basement with a vault in the basement, and he's killed 5 children? Like how do you miss that? It's not something that you miss. But apparently he does. But anyway, fast forward a little bit. He comes down there. His brother. Oh, this is the part. This is the crazy part. So anyway, the final countdown is there, and the little boy, the main character, gets another visit from this tough kid, and you're wondering to yourself, how did this tough kid allow this villain to take him out? But anyway, the tough kid gives him some advice, and then they pan over to the main villain's shopping spree. He's going shopping for shovels and all these crazy devices in order to take out the main character. And while he's going shopping for all these pickaxes and shovels and all this different stuff, while he's doing that, his brother has an epiphany. He looks at the wall where he has everything mapped out, and he realizes that, wait a minute, my brother's pretty strange. He's been acting pretty strange. There's a basement attached to the kitchen wall that he goes in and out of. And then he looks on the wall and he sees a pin which shows where the killings have been taking place. And he realizes that he's actually in the crime scene. So as he goes to the kitchen, he sees the door. He puts his hand on the doorknob as if he's going to turn it and go in the basement. He touches the doorknob and he's like, "Nah, it's impossible. There's no way my brother's a killer, right?" So he kind of goes away from the door, and everybody's like gasping, like, "Dude, are you serious? Why don't we just go check? Just go check. What is it going to hurt you?" So he goes back, he pulls the doorknob, and he goes downstairs, and they pan to the little kid, the main character, little kid, and he sees the door open. Of course, he just got this pep talk from Robin about hitting him with the phone and step back, whatever. So he's ready. But when the door opens, you see the good brother. He's like, "Oh my gosh, help me out, help me out." And we all knew it was going to happen. We all knew it was coming because the door opens very, very slowly. And you can't see the other side of the good brother. You just see his face. But the right side of the good brother is covered by the door. And we all know what's about to happen. So as he opens the door further, you then see the villain pop out with an axe. He hits his brother in the head with the axe and kills his own brother, right? And then he says this famous line: "See what you made me do? You made me, blah blah blah. Hurt his brother, whatever." So he also has this huge dog this huge dog with him, which we kind of forget was in the movie. But I didn't say this, but when he tried to get out of the house with the combination lock, that's how he woke up, because when he unlocked the front door, the dog was startled and started barking, and that's how the villain woke up and was able to catch him. But anyway, going back to the end of the movie, um, so he's like, "You see what you made me do?" He has blood all over his mask from the axe attack on his brother. And then he starts to make his way towards the main character. And he swings the axe at the main character. He didn't do the phone thing yet. He actually ducks the axe attack and he runs to the back room. And remember that hole I told you he was digging at the beginning of this little talk? He dug that hole, he put a carpet over the hole. And as the villain was coming charging towards him, he tripped over a tripwire and fell inside the hole that the little boy dug and cracked his ankle on a vent that was embedded in the hole. Now, what was confusing was when we saw him digging that hole earlier in the movie, we thought that the ghost told him to dig that hole so that he can like tunnel his way out. But it was like, no, you're not going to tunnel your way out. Instead, you're going to dig a hole, put a carpet over it so that when he tries to attack you, he would fall in that hole. Um, and he cracks his ankle on a gate that was inside the hole. And it turns out that was the gate that was guarding the window. So apparently, each ghost gave him some kind of tip that the audience thought was going to get the boy free. In reality, each of these tips that the ghost gave him just gave him ways to set the villain up for that main and final showdown. So as he cracks his ankle on the vent inside the hole, that's when the phone technique comes in, because the killer is reaching out with a broken ankle, but he's not really effective. So the little boy does a step back, come back, raises the phone, cracks him in the head about 4 or 5 times. And I think the killer tried to outsmart the little boy because he reaches in, he grabs his arm, and then we like it's over. But he's somehow able to struggle away free, and then wrap the killer's neck in a phone cord, and then snap his neck. And that's the end of him. But then he still has to get past the dog that's guarding the door. So this is where the wall freezer thing comes into place, because he finds that there's T-bone steaks in there. He grabs a T-bone steak, he throws it, and that makes the dog move away from the entrance, and he's able to go outside. Now, where does the little girl, her dreams come into play? Where does the police come into play? Well, the little girl had a dream that she was able to spot the house in which all the killings were taking place. So she rides over there to the house that she saw in her dreams, and we're all thinking the same thing. Why is this little girl riding a bike in the rain by herself with no parent guardian, and there's an abductor just roaming the streets? We all thinking that. But we also noticed that all of the kids that were abducted were boys, as if the murderer was some type of pedophile or something like that was only infatuated with boys. I don't think there was a girl victim, but that wasn't the point. She calls the police and tells them exactly the exact address of where the killings are taking place. If you ever had a dream, then dreams are never that clear, right? You don't wake up with like able to remember numbers necessarily. But this is why I say it has a lot of supernatural elements. So she points them to the house she saw in a dream, and the address was 7741. I remember that for some reason. All right, 7741. And the police break down the door, and we're all thinking the same thing, like, oh my goodness, they're going to find the little boy. This is actually before the villain comes in the basement and all that stuff transpires. The police go into the house. They find the basement and they go in the basement, and you're thinking, great, they're going to save him before he has to do anything at all. Turns out the killer had two houses. It was a house where he kept the bodies, and that's what the cops were alerted to via the little girl's dream. But there was a house that he kept the live victims. So he would kill them at the house here and then take them across the street and then bury them post-mortem. So the cops find the bodies, but it turns out the little boy was always going to have to fend for himself, because that's what Robin told you. He said, hey, you can do it. You've always been strong. You've always been able to take a punch, blah, blah, blah. So we knew that was going to play some certain or some kind of role in the film. So anyway, they find the bodies. He actually has to fend off the villain by himself, which he does successfully. He lures the dog away from the door, comes outside. The cops finally see him, and that's pretty much where it ends. His name was Phineas. That was his name. He goes back to school, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, that's him. That's him." Phineas was able to beat the grabber. They call him the grabber, the bad guy. So anyway, so that's how the movie ends. So that's my recount. In terms of my review, I'm gonna have to give it like an 8 out of 10. The pros is really really clear. It was a really cool movie. It's been hard to find good movies at the theater. I would certainly recommend going to see it. I would not see it twice. I think once you see it once, you've seen it. Um, I would say some of the drawbacks, they break a lot of reality to pull this movie off. Like I said, he's in the basement making all kinds of noise, trying to open windows and dig holes. The killer never comes down there. Some of that broke immersion for me. It's like that's not real. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. And then you saw how he gutted these other kids, but he just never seemed to do it. There was one point where he abducted one kid, and it seemed like the killer abducted another child within 24 hours. But when he abducts Phineas, or Finn is what they call him in the film, he's in the basement for like 3 or 4 days. So you're wondering to yourself, why did he stop on Finn? Why didn't he kill him within 24 hours like he seemed to do everybody else? So a lot of things happened like that were pretty convenient for the film, and a lot of that did break immersion. But if you're able to look at a film and just kind of ignore that kind of stuff, it's going to be a great experience. I realized it wasn't reality; it was a movie, so it was fine for me. So yeah, I would give it a 8 out of 10, and maybe I'll see it maybe like 3 or 4 years down the line once some of the details, get a little fuzzy. But as I said earlier, I believe it was very, very similar to Sinister One, very similar in terms of the gory depictions of children. I mean, this particular director and company seems to really be infatuated with depicting the death of children. It just is what it is. Sinister had a lot of that. This movie had a lot of that. So I would say that is something also to take into consideration. If you can handle that, you'll be fine. But yeah, decent film for sure. I would give it an 8 out of 10, and that's pretty much it. I'm not gonna. I didn't give you. It was some details I didn't tell you, but that's the overarching points. If you can visualize that, all right. But anyway, thank you for tuning in, and I'll check. I'll holler at you. Peace.